Welcome to the Leaders in Payments podcast, where we talk to C-level leaders from across the payments landscape. We'll be discussing the products and services that impact the payment space today, as well as trends and predictions for the future of payments. We will also hear stories from our guests about their journeys to the top.
Hi, everyone. This is Greg Myers, the host of the Leaders in Payments podcast, and we've got a great episode today. As we come to the end of Financial Inclusion Month, I'm hosting a roundtable discussion today with Jan-Mark Kulper from Paysafecash, Elena Whistler from The Clearinghouse, and Steve Barra from Instant Financial. And I also wanted to note that we've put together an ebook summarizing all of the podcasts from this month, as well as other contributed content around the topic of financial inclusion. So look for that to be available within the next few days. So first, what I want to do is go around the virtual room and let each of you take a minute or two to introduce yourself, your role, and the company that you work at. So Elena, let's start with you.
Great. Thank you for the invitation as well. So my name's Elena Whistler. I'm currently located in Columbus, Ohio. And really my education in economics and international studies brought me into the payment space via researching dollarization in Latin America and the value of microfinance institutions to economic growth and stability. I've been in the payments industry either working with central infrastructures like the Federal Reserve and the Clearinghouse, and also fintechs and processors such as Fiserv, FIS, and Clear2Pay. A little bit about the Clearinghouse. We are a banking association and payments company owned by 23 of the largest banks in the U.S., and we operate payment networks that clear and settle more than $2 trillion each day through wires, ACH, check image, and now real-time payments. We have a long track record of providing secure and reliable systems, payments innovation, and strategic thought leadership to financial institutions. And we work with industry regulators and associations to facilitate proper dialogue amongst our industry, ultimately representing our clients' needs and visions. Now, a little bit about my role. My role is to oversee our customer engagement model with business development, relationship management, and marketing. And our teams are responsible for the outreach to clearinghouse clients and prospects, helping to grow participation among U.S. financial institutions and evolving that customer engagement and model for all clearinghouse products.
Great. Thank you so much, Elena. Over to you, Jan-Mark.
Yeah, hello. Thank you also for the invitation. My name is Jan-Mark. I'm working with Paysafe for a little bit more than 7 years right now. And Paysafe is a leading specialist payment platform with three main areas of operation. On the one hand side, Paysafe has a B2B business for payment processing. So the US acquiring division is a top 5 non-banked payment processor in the US. Then we have B2C operations, digital wallets. So we do have digital wallets like Skrill and NetTeller, and especially Skrill in the US. And then last but not least, there's also an eCash division where we offer eCash solutions in more than 50 countries worldwide. We have something like nearly 700,000 payment locations all over the world. And I'm working for the eCash division. I'm responsible for the eCash business in the United States. And something like a year ago, we launched a product called Paysafecash in the US, which is especially designed to help solving problems for the under and unbanked. That's basically it. And happy to be here on this roundtable today.
Okay. Thank you so much. And Steve, now over to you.
Thanks, Greg. I'm Steve Barha. I'm the founder of Instant Financial. I have about 18 years in fintech and payments, including card programs and bill payment infrastructure. Along the way, my companies have had exits to PayPal and Hewlett Packard. We've had an IPO as well along the way. I'm from Vancouver, Canada originally, and living in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia over the last few years. Instant Financial is a leading earned wage access vendor. We provide the service to mid and large size employers like Randstad and Cruise Line, Goodwill, Bloomin' Brands. So about 350 corporate enterprises have rolled out Instant for their employees. And now these employees have no fee, no interest, real-time access to their earnings. So for the first time in the history of modern work, employees are able to access their pay when they like, and in doing so are avoiding borrowing from each other or living that kind of paycheck to paycheck lifestyle that makes them vulnerable to so-called alternative financial services, which is fees and interest charges where they've had to turn to overdraft of their bank accounts or other kind of less than ideal ways to make ends meet. So very, very happy with being both of service to our wonderful corporate enterprise clients, but also their employees that use our service and are financially more sound as a result of that.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve. So each of you bring a unique perspective to financial inclusion. And as most of you know, we've made progress here in the U.S. I mean, according to recent studies, the number of unbanked and underbanked continues to go down, but there's still a ways to go. So let's talk about what you're doing today to help this community. So Steve, we're going to stick with you. If you don't mind, talk about how Instant Financial is helping this underserved community.
Yeah, so like I was saying, we provide Instant to mid and large size employers who in turn roll Instant out as a key benefit for their employees. And as you mentioned, in this country, in the United States, we've seen a reduction in the overall unbanked and underbanked population, but we still have a large concentration of financially vulnerable Americans, working Americans. And so with Instant, these employees now have no fee, no interest, real-time access to their earnings. So Wednesday before payday, employees that are using our service have access to their earnings from that day. So they can avoid having to turn to fee-laden, high-interest services to try to make ends meet. Effectively, what's happening, Greg, was we've really changed these employees' relationship with payroll. Instead of it being the field gets flooded every 2 weeks with water, effectively a sprinkler's on. So every single day, employees have access to a little bit of their earnings if they want. So we're not forcing them to take their earnings, but really it's there and it's available for them if they like. And that field analogy we feel is a great way of describing what we see in practice. And farmers don't flood fields or they flood the plain every 2 weeks. They run a sprinkler every day. So this is kind of the bedrock of the Instant program as we look to lift people from being underbanked or underserved and financially vulnerable to financially coping. For the employee, the benefits are obvious. Access your earnings when you need them, no fees, no interest charges to access your earnings. What's also interesting, though, for our clients, the employers, they're able to now more effectively compete and retain their labor, especially in these tight labor markets like we're seeing right now, and all without having to change their payroll systems or processes. So it makes it an easy decision for these Instant clients to roll the program out for their employees. So we're pretty excited about the impact that we're having to serve financially vulnerable Americans with this program.
Great. Thanks, Steve. So, Jan-Mark, could you talk a little bit about Paysafecash, maybe how it works and the types of consumers that you're helping today?
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. So I think we have something what I call the payment dilemma arising in the US. On the one hand side, we have great innovations, new digital payment options arising like NFT, new technologies to simplify payments in general. But on the other hand, there's also this massive problem for the under and unbanked. And their biggest problem is basically, how can I pay my daily bills, my rent, and how can I do this efficiently and safely? So I think we need to be careful about not forgetting these kind of people. I also think we need to be careful not to discriminate them. So they have a need to simplify their payments. And therefore, we build a product in the US called Paysafecash, which is a very easy to use product. I'm now talking about some use cases to helping them with the question, how can I pay my invoice? How can I pay my bill? How can I bill my rent? So how does Paysafecash work? Basically, when you need to pay your bill, you will receive a barcode. And with this barcode, you can go to one of our 70,000 retail locations in the US. So for example, 7-Eleven, CVS, or the dollar stores. And then you basically go with this barcode directly to the cashier and he scans the barcode. Same way like he will scan a can of Coke. And then you pay for this and then the payment is done. So what we are doing in the background, we are confirming that a cash payment has been made in real time. And the good thing about this, by definition, there are no chargebacks possible. So basically, in this case, we can guarantee the payment in the second when somebody's paying it in cash. I'm saying a little bit later why this is important. this is also a huge advantage for all these billing companies and merchants. And why have we done this? We designed this product to help exactly these 25% of the Americans who are still being underbanked or unbanked. I mean, 25, 1 out of 4 Americans. This is really a massive number. And what Paysafecash is doing, Paysafecash is basically converting cash into electronic payments and having these people participate then in electronic transactions using normal cash. And based on this, I would like to highlight 3 industries and how we try to solve the problems in these 3 industries. The first one is rental, the second one, lending and government. So starting with rental, we need to have a look on the rental industry from 2 perspectives. On the one hand side, we have the tenants. And again, in the US, we are talking about 35.5 million households which are under or unbanked. So the normal question is, how can they pay their rent? And during these COVID times, it was even more difficult for them to pay their rent. They have cash, these people, but there's no option for them to pay online, to queue up, to go to the landlord, and so on. So what should they do? What kind of payment methods do they have? On the other hand, we have the property managers. And for the property managers, the very, very most and important problem with cash payment is that it's way too expensive for them. They need to set up physical locations. They need to handle the cash. Cash means delay for them. So they also have a very big need in order to convert these cash payments into digital payments. So Paysafecash, as I mentioned before, is trying to solve exactly these problems for both sides. Turning to the other industry, for example, lending, we can talk about loan installments, for example, auto loans. The issue here is basically people might have bank accounts, but at the end of the month, when they need to pay for the loan installments, very, very often it happens that there are no sufficient funds at the bank account. And COVID even made it worse. So as we know, in 2020, the unemployment rate skyrocketed and people were living from paycheck to paycheck. Looking at the gig economy, for example, payments were coming in irregular. So how can they pay for the loan installments? Sometimes we are seeing eCash or Paysafecash as a mechanism to do these very last-minute payment possibilities for these kind of customers. And also in the lending industry, it's important to know when we have a look on the non-prime or subprime category. These are the customers who do have a bad credit score, and therefore they normally rely on cash as a payment method. And exactly these kind of customers are the ones we are targeting to help them to make the payments more conveniently and to help them also to make the payments in time. And then last example is government. Financial inclusion is a social topic for the US government. So for example, during COVID, I'm just talking about the stimulus paper, which was paid in checks. Some mechanisms apply to the verticals I just mentioned, but also it's very important for the government entities, for the customers to say, how can I make regular payments? How can I pay my utility bill, my electricity bill, and so on? How can I pay my fines, such as parking tickets? And from the end customer perspective, the most important question is, how can I do this 24/7 instead of queuing up, between 9 and 5 and go to an office? And especially for these use cases, and especially for the people who still rely on cash, we have developed this product, Paysafecash. On the other hand, from the government perspective, the importance of cash is also being addressed on a political level. Cash is still basically a mandatory payment option for offline business. I'm just talking about the Payment Choice Act, like in Philadelphia or in California. So long story short, we try to solve a few of the problems of the under and unbanked when it comes to payments in cash.
Okay, thank you for that, Jan-Mark. So Elena, over to you. Can you talk about some of the programs and initiatives that the Clearinghouse is currently engaged with?
Yeah, absolutely. We're involved in a few main programs from the Clearinghouse directly, as well as with some of our governing banks, and really being part of the payment ecosystem here in the US. The first one I'll mention is Bank On. So Bank On is a very successful organization here in the US. Its goal is to ensure that everyone has access to a safe and affordable bank or credit union account. Today, more than 100 financial institutions covering over 50% of US deposit share market offer Bank On certified accounts. So these are no or low fee accounts that often come with debit cards, free, reduced ATM access, $25 or less minimum account opening deposit, and more. So we're involved in that organization to continue to support the availability of these types of accounts for all U.S. citizens and Americans that live here. On the other side, with the clearinghouse, we launched the RTP network a few years ago. It's a new payment network here in the U.S., which really truly enables real-time messaging and settlement between financial institutions. So the heart of this network is to facilitate real-time transaction activity to and from bank accounts. One of the most popular use cases is payroll on demand or real-time payroll. And maybe I'll coin the term Steve described as the sprinkler. So I might just continue talking about payroll on demand as the new sprinkler system here. But that's really what Steve describes, the heart of one of the use cases that we see on the RTP network today, providing not only optionality for individuals that need access to cash faster, but also tying work to getting paid immediately, which is really important for a large segment of the population here in the United States. With that, we've seen success with minority deposit institutions and community development financial institutions reaching financially underserved community. So we continue to work with those organizations as well as our governing banks to provide education services as well as additional easier access to onboarding onto some of these products that I described. We look forward to seeing that program grow, helping these financial institutions with their implementations, onboarding, so that they can meet the needs of their community, their membership and customer base that they really look after day to day. So we work with them to be able to work with fintechs, providers, processors, in order to have access to the RTP network in order to service their customers better.
Okay. Thank you for that, Elena. So next, I'd really like to talk about the future. So I think we just went through what each of you are doing today, but let's talk about the future and where this is heading. And this is sort of a two-part question. So what is your company planning to do to help continue this positive momentum? And then what do you think we as a payments and fintech industry need to be doing moving forward? So Elena, we'll stick with you.
Thanks. So the clearinghouse and our governing banks are continuing to support both low and no cost accounts, as well as promoting the RTP network to help individuals get faster access to their payment funds. And then as well, we'll continue to support minority deposit institutions that reach individuals directly. What we are focusing on in the future with the RTP network, as an example, is they get faster access to payments. This is also related to small businesses, which is the heart of the U.S. economy, B2B activity, in order to really foster that end-to-end ecosystem to individuals that might need access to cash faster. When I think of payments in the fintech industry and what they need to be doing, there's a couple things that come to mind. So to me, continuing to promote the value of individuals that have access to a bank account and increasing the usage of the bank account. For me, I really believe that the bank account is at the heart of financial stability and sustainability. And the more we tie to usage and access to bank accounts, the better off our citizens and Americans will be. And then secondly, what I think is outside of really the market and industry control that we might need to think about from a policy or regulatory perspective is working towards access to government issued IDs, as well as evaluating broadband internet access nationally for access to digital payments and banking services.
Okay, thank you for that. And Steve, what about you and Instant Financial?
Today, the core of the program, Instant, we've really focused our time to make sure that we didn't force employers to have to change their payroll systems or their payroll processes. And that's at mid and large size employers. Those are very, very complicated systems, very complicated processes. Every payroll person that we've talked to on this planet has said the same thing. We like the idea of providing effectively real-time liquidity for our employees, but it can't go through payroll. We can't deal with paying employees every single day. So we've had to really build Instant to stand alongside an employer's existing payroll processes. And we provide that liquidity to those employees without affecting the processes and tools that the employer has in place. So that's been a very kind of key focus for us over the last 5 years. And then I'd say we coupled that with making sure that we had the right business model attached to this innovation that we've brought to market, Instant Pay. And that business model is no fee, no interest to access your earnings. There's no semantic trickery in our program that we would use to reach into a vulnerable employee's pockets to drive, fee or interest revenue. So standing up the Instant prepaid Visa debit card program that provides no fees for the employee to access their earnings, but also still provides them real-time access to these earnings. That focus rather on business model innovation and that focus on not impacting the payroll processes and systems at the employer. That's really been our focus over the last few years. Moving forward, or rather from a future perspective, we're really focused on what I call the true financial wellness roadmap. And then the kind of the foundational thinking there is that we talk a lot in this industry about financial wellness. And I think before we really can focus on wellness or financial health, we have to go back and acknowledge how much of our population is financially vulnerable. So at Instant, this no fee, no interest Instant Pay helps to lift employees that use our service from being financially vulnerable to financially coping, at least. And from financially coping, we can graduate these employees to financial health or to touch on financial wellness. And that's really what our roadmap is focused on, with the end goal being to graduate, and I use that term very specifically, this population of employees from just working for their money to having their money work for them. So that's really kind of our future focus.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. So Jan-Mark, same two-part question for you. What are you doing? What is your company planning to do to continue the positive momentum? And then what do you think the payments and fintech industry needs to be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, from Paysafe as a company, obviously, the use cases I just mentioned in some verticals, they apply also to many, many other verticals: healthcare, travel, e-commerce, and so on. So this is basically the first step, to offer payment solutions towards people who are still reliant on payment with cash. Secondly, I think we should try to solve what I just mentioned, the payment dilemma. How can you offer a merchant, a client, a partner, all kind of payment options with one single integration? So offering the highest technology payment options plus eCash with one integration, one reconciliation, one reporting topics, and so on. And the goal is basically to include the financially excluded into the standard checkout experience you have with e-commerce site, but also with bill and rent payment and so on. Lastly, from a Paysafe perspective, we should not also pay attention to financial inclusion, but also to diversity inclusion in general. Then coming to the industry perspective, I think that the fintech and payment industry needs to be aware of the fact that despite the progressing digitalization, there are still many people, out of whatever reasons, which cannot participate in the online economy. For example, lack of knowledge, skills, even education. So the keyword here is financial literacy. And just to end up with some figures, in the end, we are talking about 63 million Americans who are underbanked or who are completely unbanked. And if you go into different counties in the US or different areas, just an example, in Texas, in Starr County, there are more than 60% of the people who are under or unbanked, meaning that yes, this is a very, very huge part of the population which should be taken care of. And last but not least, I just read a figure that still 78% of the underbanked are reporting to use cash as their preferred payment method, even after the pandemic. So in general, eCash should be a simple solution to be integrated by businesses and to be used by the customers.
Okay. And to wrap up the show and to wrap up Financial Inclusion Month, I wanted to give each of you an opportunity to touch on anything that we may have missed and or to let the audience know the best way to learn more about you and your solution. So Jan-Mark, we'll stick with you.
Okay. I think in general, we need firstly to give choice for payments for all the people, especially for these who are financially excluded. Secondly, from the end customer perspective, we need to give them very easy accessibility to do payments, talking about the 70,000 payment locations with very easy use cases. And for businesses, basically, I think we need to offer businesses very short time to market, very easy implementation. We should offer them a very short money collection time, less delays in payment, guaranteed funds, and so on. And last but not least, we need to offer payment methods which are not discriminating any kind of people who are not able to participate in electronic payments so far.
Jan-Mark, what would be the best way for people to learn more about Paysafecash?
First of all, obviously, reaching out directly to me or having a look on our website at paysafecash.com.
Okay, great. So Elena, same question for you.
I'd say my main message is to remind everyone that the clearinghouse is established to promote secure and reliable systems, payment innovation, and strategic thought leadership to all financial institutions here in the U.S. Our mission is really to support the betterment of U.S. payment systems, financial access, education, and promotion of bank accounts. And that's front and center in what we do and what we bring to life here in the payment systems. I do encourage folks interested to reach out to me directly or go to our website at theclearinghouse.org to learn more about our programs, our payment networks, and any new advocacy work that we are doing or policy work that we're doing. Thanks, Greg.
Great. Thank you, Elena. So Steve, over to you.
Thanks, Greg. Jean-Marc, congrats to you and the Paysafe team. It's a very exciting business that y'all have built over there. And Elena, thank you, the Clearinghouse, and for everything that you do for all of us across the financial services world and in fintech. I know we take a lot of credit for a lot of the excitement, but it's all built on infrastructure you guys have provided for us. So thank you. I think, Greg, these are exciting times, as we all know, with all these labor force changes, the youthful focus on experiences rather than just material goods seems to be making its way back into the forefront in conversations. The rapid evolution of social media and the compulsive behaviors maybe that we found in those systems just feels like there's a lot going on across so many fronts. And I hope we can challenge ourselves to do the hard work to bring real and impactful solutions to market that truly change the status quo and that they leave a lasting impact, especially in fintech and payments. I think there's a lot of technology in our space. There's a lot of incredible innovators. And I hope we can continue to be focused on building real material programs and products that have a lasting impact. That said, I'm always excited to talk fintech or talk social impact. So listeners can email me directly at steve@instant.co. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Or if you want to learn more about Instant, our website is instant, instant.co. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Steve. As many of you already know, there's so many things that are already being done in the industry to help make an impact. And I just want to personally thank the three of you for being involved in this entire month and for the messages that you guys have provided to the industry. So again, thank you so much for being on the show today. And finally, to everyone listening, we've launched 6 podcasts and 4 videos this month, all focused on financial inclusion. So I encourage you to go listen to each of those and watch the videos and think about how your company can participate in financial inclusion. And don't forget, in a few days, we'll have our ebook out. So please go and download that. Hopefully we'll have that out in a couple of days by November 1st at the latest. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Leaders in Payments podcast. Make sure you visit our website at leadersinpayments.com, where you can subscribe to the show and where you'll find our show notes. If you enjoyed listening, please share on your social channels as well.